Namaste, all of you. Welcome to this session. We are considering the antarayas, the impediments, the obstructions for yoga in yoga, called yogantarayas. And therein, we are now coming to consider the antaraya in the form of avirati. At the outset, let me tell you that we should not get overwhelmed with the topic of obstacles in yoga. It should be borne in mind that the reference is that Ishvara Pranidhana, the contribution of Ishvara Pranidhana for nullifying these obstacles is what is being considered. It is not just obstacles being considered, but Ishvara Pranidhana in the form of Pranava Japa, in the form of other mantras, mantra japas, in the form of Nama, Nama Japa, Nama Sadhana, Nama Smaranam, Nama Sankirtanam. So, there is enormous potentials in Ishvara Nama, Bhagavan Nama, to the extent that they are Taraka Namas. Why only these obstacles? Bhagavan Nama is said to be Taraka Nama. It can help you go across the mundane ocean, mundane mire, Bhavasagara, Bhavabandha, Bhavaroga. So not only the diseases that we are familiar with today because of the medical science, Vaidyaka Shastra, where we understand the problems of corporeal body, problems in various parts of the body, various organs of the body. But starting from there, right from ordinary sprain, catch, stomachache, headache, to ulcer, cancer and whatnot, to Bhavaroga itself. Bhavaroga is that disease which is, or dis-ease rather, it may not be a disease, but it is dis-ease, enormous dis-ease on account of being in the world, being mortals, being human beings, having taken birth. So that is called Bhavaroga. Those who are oriented to philosophical tenets and precepts and the very ambience, they will realize that Bhavaroga is a dreadening roga. So, point is that merely Bhagavan Nama Smaranam, Bhagavan Nama Kirtanam, Bhagavan Namocharanam, Bhagavan Nama Lekhanam, writing down the Bhagavan Nama, there is enormous pathy. There is enormous pathy in Bhagavad Smarana, Bhagavan Nama, etc., etc. So, this must be at the back of the mind, rather than getting overwhelmed by the obstacles such as Vyadhis. We know how Vyadhi is obstacle. I said Vyadhi is an obstacle for mundane life, business activity of life. Every of these obstacles is obstacle for our mundane life, and we experience it there. And we have been so much sunk in mundane life that we think this is the real life, this is the only life. But philosophy tells you something else. The point is not to lose this advertence on the fact that Ishvara Pranidhana is being mentioned not only as a means for asamprajnat samadhi and tat phalam, but even samprajnat samadhi and tat phalam, then abhyasa vairagya and tat phalam, chitta vritti nirodham and tat phalam, whatever extent of chitta vritti nirodha and tat phalam, that is, tat phalam means its fruit, its fructification, its effect, consequence, but also as a pathy. Bhagavan Nama coming as a pathy from minutest problems, nigglings to Bhavarogam. So now coming to this avirati, which is the next of the obstacles or yogantarayas. It's a very interesting term that Patanjali has used it. The four-lettered word avirati, actually the word is rati, and there are two prefixes. So the rati is the word. Rati means to indulge in sensuality, go after pleasures, go after happiness, seek happiness, enjoy happiness, seek delights, enjoy delights. That is called rati. Rati means indulging with indulgences, sensory objects, mental objects, and enjoy the life. Enjoy means not just enjoy, n-joy or joy raised to n. The word in English enjoy is also something which is worth taking note of. The funny element in it. The word is enjoy. But then enjoy. Joy raised to n is to enjoy. So that's the philosophy of some of the stark materialists. They just think that life is meant for enjoyment and go on enjoying the life, every moment of it. And see that if in your path, if you get something that which is not an enjoyment, see that you take a bypass, diversion, and see that you are heading towards joy in life, and joy and joy and joy is only life. So that is rati, to be frolicsome. And then there is a prefix to it, which is a negative prefix, virati. Virati means not to adhere to that philosophy of being frolic and going after enjoyment. So that is virati. That means in simple words vairagya. So virati means vairagya, vigatarati, to turn the back to frolicsome philosophy of life, which is no philosophy of life. But there are some people, they say that, claim that that is their philosophy of life, to be enjoying the life. Be happy. To be happy in life is one thing, but to be enjoying is something different. So virati means vairagya in simple words. Rati means absence of vairagya in simple words. So understand the word here. Rati, absence of vairagya. Virati means vairagya. And now another negative prefix by way of making it avirati, means dwindling of vairagya. So what is implied in dwindling of vairagya? Some amount of temperance, moderation has been attained by whatever endeavor, whatever resolve, whatever determination, with whatever discipline, with whatever practices, one has inculcated some amount of vairagya in the form of moderation, temperance, simplicity in life, and having a higher goal in life, so that the gratification philosophy falls apart, like dry leaves from tree falling off. So that is vairagya. Now, any dwindling means the vairagya already acquired gets somewhere a leakage or some kind of a seduction in it, and the Vairagya dissipating is avirati. So that is a big obstacle. So understand, what is being mentioned as obstacle is not absence of Vairagya, but dwindling of Vairagya. So that should be clearly understood in this Patanjali's selection of the term avirati. And it happens, you see, we make sincere endeavors to really inculcate the value of Vairagya, and we definitely follow some discipline in life, some sort of resolution in life. We are quite resolved, we are quite determinate, we really forego so many things for the sake of discipline needed in Vairagya, and that is really praiseworthy, that whatever endeavor one has put in, whatever resolve one has put in, whatever determination one has put in, the Nigraha kind of wall is raised up. It's a wall of restraint, because to practice Vairagya you need a lot of restraint. In the formative phase it is a lot of restraint, and of course, so there is almost a wall is raised up in order to prevent ourselves from falling into the gravity of gratification. But for some reason, usually it is called samskara vashat. Samskara vashat, there is some kind of leakage allowed in Vairagya, and the restraint slowly leaks out from the mind, and that is really devastating. Having attained some control and regulation and moderation and temperance, for some reason there is some kind of leakage in the restraint, and therefore the restraint leaks out, and then whatever is the consequence can be imagined. So understand how this is heartbreaking kind of obstacle. Having absence of Vairagya is not so heartbreaking. You might be wanting to do yoga, but the Vairagya is not there. So that's something that is preventing you to commence your yoga or be more dedicated towards yoga or completely offer yourself to yoga. That's not a big obstacle as much as this is, because you have done something, you have really regulated yourself, you have resolved, and you have really carried out restraint exercises. But at some point in time, this is what is happening, that there is leakage in the restraint, and therefore the yoga becomes more and more enfeebled. So that is why, if you recall the Vairagya topic, when we were discussing Abhyasa Vairagya, much was told about Vairagya. So Vairagya is not just that you must do it for first time or at the beginning. It must be a constant ongoing process. If you recall, there was a mention of Vishaya Dosha Darshanam. The Vishaya Dosha Darshanam, that is citing the defects in all the objects of senses and objects of mind, which are alluring, which are enticing. Now, this is not just to be done once. This must be done repeatedly. The mind must be alerted often by the Vishaya Dosha Darshanam. Once knowing the defects in the objects, that they can bind us, they can allure us, they can entice us, they can spoil us. It's not just once knowing it. This must be a constant process, what is called as Vishaya Dosha Darshanam. And therefore the satsang has to be done. The Moksha Shastra will often alert you about this. If you recall in Vairagya discussion, We went through Bhagavad Gita and cited in each chapter Vairagya coming in some form or the other. There is no chapter of Bhagavad Gita bereft of mention of Vairagya of some kind or the other. So, the Vishaya Dosha Darshanam is something that must be always followed by being on the toes. One needs to be on the toes in the path of Vairagya for quite some time, quite a long distance. You must be alert. You must be having very critical mind and critical observation of the things come in your life, that you face in your life, and you need to take that care. You must be ever vigilant about it. This is how the Vishayas have the gravity, that if you are not ever vigilant, then they will definitely engulf you. They will take control over your mind, control over your senses. So, Vishaya Sevanarup kind of tendency that is there, it is a tendency. It's an age-old tendency, ageless tendency. So therefore, you can understand how formidable is the vasana aspect in us, the tendency aspect in us, the propensity towards enjoyment, propensity towards delight, propensity towards gratification of the senses. So, and you will understand that sometimes the desire to have the enjoyment is so strong, irresistible absolutely. You can't resist it. And unless you have taken that enjoyment, you are not pacified. And many times it is felt that, when it is irresistible desire, irresistible kind of tendency, there is no other way but to satisfy it. And then if you have satisfied it, it is only a temporary relief. It's no doubt a big relief, but it's a temporary relief. And not only temporary relief, it amounts to saying that you have already put some fuel in the fire. So, it's not just you get satisfied by going for that irresistible gratification, or when the gratification becomes irresistible, when you succumb to it, you have already added some fuel in the fire. So that's how the dangerous is this tendency for enjoyment, sensory gratification, and mental gratification. So I recall a statement from Vishnu Puranam, which is oft quoted in all Adhyatmic texts with reference to this Vairagya. It comes in 4.10.24. न जातो कामः कामानाम् उपभोगेन शाम्यति हविषा कृष्णवर्त्वेव भूय एव अभिवर्धते. There's this tendency, sensory tendencies are such that they are irresistible, and then you just get into a gravity of it, and you really have no escape, and you wholeheartedly get into the gravity of it. Not that you have some resistance within, and then no, its gravity is so strong that it pulls you and it draws you. And unless you satisfy and gratify that, you are not at all in peace. You really can't be getting peace unless you have gratified that urge and desire. And that's why we fall victims to it. And therefore, for student of yoga, adhyatma on higher rung are often warned about it. There's a warning coming often that if you offer any oblation into that fire of tendency and passion, it is temporary relief, but know that you have added fuel to fire. So that's how this the foe which comes as avirati or even avairagya is, and that is to be understood here. So about this avirati, let me tell you here that it is avirati, and the two negative prefixes are coming to the word, which is rati. Rati is to enjoy, as I said just now. Now let's see what Vyasa comments on it. Avirati chittasya vishaya samprayogatma gardha. So, how does this dwindling of vairagya happens? More often it is like this, that the objects of enjoyment, sensory objects or mental objects, are presented in front of your mind. They are presented in front of your eyes. They are presented in front of your senses. So when they are present in front of your senses and mind, then you start developing gardha. Gardha means lalasa. Lalasa means desire. So when you have this kind of symptom, that when you are really confronting those objects which are objects of enjoyment, which were object of enjoyment before you went for your inculcation of vairagya, now if you see that still that desire is bubbling, that worm of desire is bubbling and coming to surface, that is called gardha. And you get a tendency that really you should go in indulgence with it. Maybe with your reform you may not really fall victim, but merely if that bubble is coming in the mind, know that there is potential avirati in you. Even if you are able to resist it, the desire bubbles up. But because of your reformation or reforming powers, you are able to perhaps overcome it and not fall victim to it. But yet, if the desire is bubbling, that means you have this avirati in you. That means desire to indulge is there. So this desire to indulge is spoken of here. So that's the indicator. If in spite of object presented, if it is not going to create any trigger of passion or trigger of desire in you, then you are reinforced against this obstacle in the form of avirati. But as long as that is not happening, and still there is a desire which bubbles up, then that is avirati component, avirati potential in you. So you need to understand that you are able to overcome it. You are able to not fall a victim to it. But still you need to take some measures because the desire is still there. The passion to enjoy is still there. So that is how Vyasa has explained this avirati. And then he says, avirati chittasya vishaya samprayogatma. Not only contact with the senses, but even in the deeper plane of psyche consciousness, in the deeper mind even, when the objects come, if they are disturbing its balance, that means that is avirati. That means our vairagya is not still reinforced. So in vairagya bhava, see, understand, in vairagya bhava, what is to be understood from Vyasa's statement is, in absence of vairagya, one heads and goes towards the objects. A frolicsome person, carnal, cupid person goes towards the objects. While here, objects are coming to the chitta. That is perhaps the very deepest core of the mind. The objects are coming because he doesn't go to the objects because of reformation, discipline, temperance and moderation. So he doesn't walk to the objects. So when he doesn't walk to the objects themselves walk to the psyche, the deeper plane of the mind. So this is what we have to understand. Vishaya Samprayogatma. So there are two meanings to Vishaya Samprayoga, and to Chitta means the objects are coming to Chitta, not person going to objects, not objects coming to senses, because perhaps you have reformative gates at the senses and therefore you can shun the objects from your senses, but they straight away get into the Chitta. Like it happens in case of infections, viral infections, etc., or infections. They are identified only when they have gotten in and they are able to work from within. So, when he says Chittasya Vishaya Samprayogatma, this is what is implied here, that reformed practitioner or reformed yoga practitioner, Adhyatma Sadhaka, doesn't walk to objects. He takes a diversion. In case he sees that the objects are coming in his way, he will take diversion, he will take a bypass, or he has restraint so much so that he can walk by it. He will be walking by the objects which are trying to entice, yet he will be through because of his wall of restraint, which I told you about, that sadhaka builds a wall of restraint. So the wall protects him, but the wall doesn't work for Chitta. So that is what is little deeper scan of the Vyasa's comment tells us. Then there are other classical commentators who have commented upon, and I recall Nagoji Bhatta, who adheres to the interpretation of Vijnana Bhikshu. He says in his commentary called Chaya Vritti, Avirati Chitta Vishaya Samprayogatma Tat Sannikarsha Janya Abhilasha Rupo Gardha. So he further opens out Gardha. Abhilasha Rupa. Abhilasha means desire. Ichha, desire. So there is Abhilasha. Abhilasha is always in the mind. Abhilasha is sometimes it is actually it's from a deeper plane of mind and not very peripheral. The Abhilasha is always deep rooted in the mind. It's not just something very, very peripheral. So Abhilasha is always deep rooted, and then that Abhilasha is the kind of Gardha where you don't fall victims to objects, but you fall victim to that passion which has bubbled from within. Then there is another statement by another interpreter, Avirati Chittasya Vishaya Samprayogatma Gardha. So he quite goes hand in hand with Vyasa's commentary. Nagoji Bhatta in his Laghu Vritti says, Avirati Vishaya Abhilasha. He says, what is Abhilasha? Therefore, Avirati means still Abhilasha is there. The desire to have the joy is there. Not just restraint to take joy, but there is desire. So initially we will have only restraint for desires. But there is Abhilasha. That is Avirati. That is why it causes Avirati. So it's also thirst for objects. Or Vishaya Sakti. The Vishaya Sakti is the word used by Chandrika. Maniprabha commentary uses the word Vishaya Trushna. There is still thirst for objects. See, like in case of sometimes a grown up person is thirsty. It doesn't mean that he is dying for water. But in case of a baby child, if the child is thirsty, it cannot resist. It cannot resist. It wants the water immediately, otherwise, it has its tantrums. But a grown up person doesn't have tantrums. He can put up with the thirst for a little more time, half an hour, 1 hour, he can be. Although thirsty, he can put up with it. Similarly, reformed person may be able to put up, but still the thirst is there. If the thirst is there, that is avirati. Whether he falls victim to it or not is not the consideration here. He may not fall victim to that kind of desire and end up in gratification. He might restrain. Still the restraint might be there, but mere abhilasha, ichha itself is avirati, because that can definitely work at some point in time in some way or the other. So that's how the avirati has been described by various commentators. Now, how does this avirati, how does it come up? How does it get rooted or finds a place in a human psyche or human chitta? Vishnu Purana tries to give us some clue. It says with reference to avirati that avirati is a kind of disease or vikara which is there for the youth condition, youth stage in life. Because we all have gone through tarunya, or everyone will go through the phase of tarunya, or one has gone through the phase of tarunya. Tarunya means youth. And it is here that avirati is seeded. Because you can imagine, those who have gone past the youth, you can recall your days when you were in youth, your youth. So that's a phase in life, that's a biological phase in life, that's stage in life, biological condition in life, that the rati bhava and the raga bhava gets nurtured and nourished. So that's the place where we really have this infection of avirati. We might build up restraint, after youth, or we might start in very youth itself, but youth itself has such a condition that there is some seed of avirati will have fallen, so which can really later sprout. So, because that's how the youth is, the condition of youth is, the biochemistry of youth is, or the young mind is. The mind of a young person, mind of youth, physiology of youth, the mindset of youth is such that the seed of avirati will be definitely falling in the chitta. And therefore, Vishnu Purana says that if you really want to be very serious about spiritual pursuit, it is better to take some steps while you are in childhood. When you are a balaka, when you are a child, something needs to be done there itself, because you will transit into teenage and being young, and therefore something has to be commenced. Something has to be done while you are young, when you are a child itself. Otherwise, you will not be able to tread on the path of vairagya too long. Because if you have not taken any measure while you are child, while you are teenager, and then while you are in your youth, so much of avirati infection will have already taken place in the chitta, for the chitta, then it will be really very, very, very difficult to counter that. So therefore Vishnu Purana has this instruction. It describes our life and shows how it is vulnerable to avirati, or how it is vulnerable to rati bhava, or the gratification tendency to really get afforested. So it describes when somebody is in childhood. What is a child? You want the child to be naughty. You don't want the child to be not naughty. Parents don't appreciate, and perhaps that is also considered as an abnormality. The child must be playful, and this playfulness itself puts a seed for avirati, playfulness. So, and that's how our childhood is. We are all playful in childhood, and there this avirati seed falls into the chitta. So in balyavastha, we are engaged in all kind of naughty activities and enjoyment. The moment the child has woken up, it wants some pleasure. It will be going after pleasure. This is a very natural tendency, because the child is playful very naturally. And then when the child comes to youth, naturally youth means to enjoy and gratify the desires, the senses. The senses all starts having their say. When you are young, it's not possible that the senses don't have any say. They have a tremendous say, very powerful say, and therefore we fall victim of gratification. That is how the tarunya is. That is how the youth condition is, and the youthfulness is. Therefore, I recall a mystic poet saying that youthful youth is process to rapidify our gallop towards becoming aged. Youthful youth is rapidifying the process to grow older and older and older, quickly rapidifying. It rapidifies because we indulge so much in pleasures. That's how very biochemistry, physiology, and the conditions in youth are. That we want the gratification. The gratification scores over whatever resolve you have. And so it is spent in enjoyment. So this is that's called enjoying the objects. We develop sensuality in youth, and it is very difficult to not be sensual in youth. And then man comes to adulthood. In adulthood, there are lots of pressures, family pressures, social pressures. So the man is under pressures. So this map is, you can see the Maya in the very mapping of life. That when you are young, you are frolicsome, and you are tending to go for gratifications, and it's quite natural, it's irresistible. But the next stage immediately that comes up is adulthood, and in adulthood means you have pressures, tensions, worries, anxieties. So these are pressures which come on the mind. So lots of suppressions come because of this adulthood. And then in old age, all the motor forces go weak, fragile. And there is helplessness, haplessness, hopelessness in old age. Therefore, the life should be understood. And then we should, if we have the wisdom, and Satsanga tells you about all this. What is your Balyavastha? What is your Kishoravastha? What is your Tarunyavastha? What is your Praudhavastha? What is your Vardhakyavastha? So these are the stages in life. So we are infants, then become children, then we get the adolescence. So we know what is the turmoil of being in that age, teenage, the adolescence. Then comes the youth. So we can understand the tumult in the mind in the phase of youth. And then comes adulthood. So we know we can be really knowing the pressures that come in adulthood, every kind of responsibility, the pressures, the tensions, the anxieties, the worries. And then comes the old age. So old age means all the motor energies start receding down, motor powers recede down, the body organs and various aspects of mind also become weaker and weaker and weaker at a rapid pace. And then comes Vardhakya, decrepancy. The fate of decrepit can be imagined. Who has to lean on the stick and otherwise cannot even stand? So, in Satsanga, we are given the view of this life and reality of the life. So that would help one to understand the importance of moderation and temperance and simplicity. So Vishnu Purana has a wonderful piece of instruction here in 1.17.75 and 76 verses. Balye kridanasakta yauvane vishayonmukhaha ajnanayantya shaktya cha vardhakam samupasthitam tasmad balye vivekatma yatet shreyase sada balya yauvana vruddhadyai deher bhavair asanyutaha. Knowing that we are going to get these stages in life, and particularly today we want to live long. Everybody wants to live long, and today we are able to live long. The desire to live long was there all the time, but today we are able to live long because of the cocktail of medicines available today. Like we have idea of breakfast and lunch and dinner. Today's lifestyle, particularly for senior citizens, is a morning bowl of pills, which is a cocktail of medicines and supplementaries, etc., etc. Then there is again afternoon bowl, which is again a cocktail of so many drugs and energizers and tonics, and so also at night. That's how the life has become so much drug dependent that we have to swallow so many pills in old age, and therefore we are able to live long. But when we live long, we should know what is this mapping of human life. Anyway, Vishnu Purana says, therefore, Balye Vivekatma Yate Shreyase. It is Shreyas. It is more advisable to commence something while you are in Balyavastha. Now, you yourself cannot commence while you are a child. It is the surroundings, it is the samskars, it is the family, samskar atmosphere in the family that should influence even a child. So it should slowly understand the importance of inculcating the right values. And it is proper that we inculcate these values when we are children, because that is a flexible age, and that's the age where impressions easily get formed. Impressions can be formed. Impressions can be given and can be taken. So that's the time when impressions can be formulated. That is the time to give right impressions. So it is responsibility of the parents and elderly people in the family. You can't expect the child to be responsible or behave responsibly. So it must be given the atmosphere. Anyway, then I recall another wonderful verse which is from Adi Shankara's Bhajagovindam. It really is eye-opener for us. So in his Bhajagovindam there is a couplet, very poetic. Angam galitam palitam mundam dashana bhinam jatam tundam vruddho yati gruhitva dandam tadapi na munchiti asha pindam. So he says, the body has become old, aged, like the body of a decrepit. It has become jirna shirna. It has become weak and also going towards rot. The hair all have gone white, or they have become silver hair, or perhaps the hair have fallen off. All the teeth, the whole furniture of the mouth has been dislodged, has fallen off. But the gardha, the ichha, the desire is ever young. This is the travesty of human life. Body grows old, body becomes feeble, weak, fragile, but the desire is ever young. Tadapi na munchiti asha pindam. The asha doesn't grow. There is no old age to asha. There is no old age to desire. I recall another poet, mystic poet saying, it characterizes it that the organ of the tongue, gustatory organ. See the strange coincidence. The tongue is ever young. Its lust, its greed for all those eatable things doesn't dwindle. And it is ever in youth. And therefore, the nature has given ever pink color to it. The pinkishness of it doesn't go away. Your pinkishness of your on the body, figuratively, that is the youth, will go away. But the tongue is ever pink. For everyone, pink. There is no one who does the pink tongue. The tongue is inherently, intrinsically pink. It's not just the color, its tendency. It is very, very formidable force to really counter the craze of the tongue. Basically because it is ever young. It is ever in pink age. So understand how we have potentials to devastate our vairagya. Whatever we might have attained, unless we have not attained it to an extent where it is ensured that it would stay on, understand it can be, there can be infiltration very easily, and the tongue is such a strong organ for the avirati to get in. I recall Bhartruhari in his Vairagya Shatakam, a wonderful 100 verses on Vairagya. Valibhi mukham akrantam palitairanggita shiraha gatrani shithilayante trushna eka tarunayate. Everything in man grows old. As the years pass, everything in man grows old, but one is going towards youth, more and more towards the youth. What is that? Trushna. What is that? That is thirst. So thirst will be going towards more and more young age. It doesn't stay young. It becomes younger and younger and younger. And that's why heartbreaking story of human being. So he says the whole face is full of wrinkles. The whole body is full of wrinkles, the sign of old age. The hair on the head has gone white, or have perhaps fallen off also. Then the whole body has got loosened up. Everywhere there is looseness. Nothing is tight. Nothing can be tightened. It is all loose, fragile. But the thirst is becoming younger and younger and younger. So we should be dreaded of this avirati. That is what is the lesson here. So that is how this avirati has been explained. And of course much can be said about, as you realize when Vairagya was spoken about, in Abhyasa Vairagya aspect of yoga, I told you there that much can be said about Vairagya, very little can be done. So similarly, about avirati, much can be said, very little can be done, and what is important for us is to be doing something there. So saying much, we should not go overboard there, and therefore I am ending this exposition to avirati here. So that's the antaraya, and let me give you a final reminder that no measure is as strong as Ishvara Pranidhana, Bhagavad Sharanya, Bhagavad Krupa, and then from our side Bhagwan Nama, Bhagavad Bhakti. That is only one which is going to save us. Your discipline, your will, your resoluteness, your volition, your muscle of the mind, it's not going to go that far. So we should not lose our advertence. For every obstacle, we must every time relate it that we need to take recourse to Ishvara Pranidhanam according to Patanjali's scheme. And with that reminder that Ishvara Pranidhan in the form of Omkar sadhana, Omkar japa, mantra japa, nama japa, nama smaranam, nama sankirtanam, mantra shravanam, mantra pathanam, all these are all the means, and all that we discussed in Ishvara Pranidhan is really the one which can work sufficiently successfully. Because he says by Ishvara Pranidhana, antaraya bhava. Antarayas will be countered by Ishvara Pranidhana. This advertence should not be lost. So with that, we end this session with avirati. And we'll be proceeding to the next antaraya, which is Bhranti Darshanam. But that is next time. Namaskar all of you.